There is a particular gaze in the eyes of a woman who has mastered the art of being alone. It's not the vacant stare of loneliness, nor the guarded look of heartbreak. It is a gaze of profound presence. It's the look of someone who has stared into the abyss of her own soul and found not emptiness, but an entire universe. This is the woman who lives alone not by circumstance, but by a deep resonant choice. And her existence is one of the most misunderstood and therefore most powerful phenomena in our modern world. Society has 1,000 labels for her: cold, difficult, intimidating, damaged, overly independent. But these are just flimsy shields used to deflect the brilliant, uncomfortable light she radiates. Because the truth about the woman who lives alone without a man isn't a story of absence. It's a story of radical presence. She isn't without love. She is so full of it that she refuses to accept any diluted or counterfeit version. She isn't lost. She is so deeply found that she no longer needs another person's map to navigate her own life. She is a walking paradox that dismantles everything we've been taught about female fulfillment. We were told a woman's value is reflected in who chooses her. She has discovered her value is in how fiercely she chooses herself. We were taught that her happiness is a shared project. She has learned that her peace is a sovereign territory, and she is its sole guardian. This woman is a living embodiment of one of Carl Jung's most fundamental truths. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. She has stopped being a product of her history, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the betrayals, and has become the architect of her destiny. Her solitude is not a waiting room for a partner to arrive. It is the sacred cathedral where she communes with the divine within herself. It is the workshop where she meticulously rebuilds her own spirit peace by painstaking peace. And this process, this journey inward, is what makes her so magnetic and yet so terrifying to a world built on external validation. She doesn't need to be saved, and that single fact renders an entire paradigm of relational dynamics obsolete. Men who have built their identity on being the rescuer, the provider of worth, the validator, are left disarmed in her presence. They don't know the language of her wholeness. Women who are still tethered to the belief that a partner will complete them may view her with a mixture of awe and resentment because she is a living mirror to the freedom they both crave and fear. Her stillness isn't apathy, it's power. Her silence isn't emptiness, it's a declaration of energetic sovereignty. She has simply decided that her own company is more nourishing than the company of anyone who would require her to shrink. And until she meets a soul who encourages her expansion, she will continue to walk her path alone, not in defiance, but in devotion to the magnificent, complex, and sacred self she has fought so hard to reclaim. The sanctuary a woman builds in her solitude is not constructed from bricks of bitterness or walls of fear. It is forged from the fires of self-realization. To the uninitiated, it may look like a fortress designed to keep the world out, but for her, it is a temple designed to keep her soul in. Carl Jung taught us that the journey to consciousness is not a gentle ascent into the light, but a perilous descent into our own darkness. The woman who chooses to live alone has consciously or not embarked on this heroic journey. She has turned her gaze away from the distracting glitter of the external world and dared to look within into the vast, often turbulent ocean of her own subconscious. There she has met the ghosts that society encourages us to ignore. She has sat with the abandoned inner child, held the hands of her past selves who felt unseen and unloved, and listened to the whispers of ancestral trauma passed down through her maternal line. Her choice to be alone is not the result of a fresh wound. It is the conscious decision that arises from a scar that is finally beautifully healed. She hasn't given up on love. On the contrary, she believes in it so profoundly that she can no longer tolerate the facsimiles that are so often passed off as the real thing. She has known the chaos of codependency. She has poured her life force into empty vessels. She has loved until she was unrecognizable to herself, shrinking her dreams, silencing her intuition, and editing her personality to be more palatable, more acceptable, less too much. She has begged for emotional crumbs from tables that were never meant to feed her. But one day, after one too many disappointments, the pain ceased to be just pain. It alchemized into wisdom. The awakening was not a single dramatic lightning strike, but a slow dawning sunrise after a long, dark night of the soul. What the world now interprets as coldness is in fact an unshakable emotional maturity. And maturity is intimidating. It doesn't play games. It doesn't seek drama for connection. It demands truth, reciprocity, and a depth of presence that most people are not prepared to offer. This is why she seems so selective, so picky. She is no longer attracted to potential but to presence. She is no longer moved by grand declarations but by consistent, quiet action. Her energy has become a highly calibrated filter. She can sense inauthenticity from a mile away. She can feel the subtle energetic drain of someone who seeks to consume rather than connect. And she will not hesitate to walk away, not with drama or anger, but with the quiet dignity of a queen leaving a court that no longer serves her kingdom. She doesn't need to be rescued. She needs to be seen, truly seen. Not just her light, but her shadows. Not just her strengths, but her vulnerabilities. To be seen in her wholeness requires a partner who has also done the work of seeing himself. It requires someone brave enough to dive into their own depths, and that is a journey few are willing to take. And so she remains in her sovereign solitude, not as a victim of fate, but as a priestess of her own integrity. She awakens admiration in those who are on a similar path of self-discovery, and she awakens fear in those who still believe their wholeness lies in the hands of another. She doesn't want to complete anyone nor be completed. She is waiting to overflow alongside someone who is already gloriously divinely whole. There is a fundamental misunderstanding between protecting oneself and isolating oneself. The woman who has found peace in her own company is not hiding from the world. She is preserving her hard-won inner state. She operates from a place of essence, not convention. Carl Jung wisely observed that where convention reigns, authenticity struggles to breathe. And this woman has chosen above all else to be authentic. She has heard it all. You're too demanding. You'll end up alone forever. You need to lower your standards. No one is perfect. And she meets these projections with a serene, knowing smile. Because what they call demanding is what she has come to recognize as her non-negotiable standard for respect. What they call picky is simply her refusal to betray herself again. She isn't searching for a flawless human being. She is searching for an honest one. She is looking for someone with the emotional maturity to love, without possessing, to support, without controlling, and to cherish without diminishing. She is looking for a partner who has faced their own demons, because she knows that only someone who has walked through their own fire can stand in hers without getting burned. The discomfort she generates is not her responsibility. It is a reflection of the collective shadow. She is a living embodiment of the truth that a woman's happiness is not contingent on her relationship status. This truth is a wrecking ball to patriarchal structures that have for centuries relied on female dependency. It unnerves men who derive their sense of power from being needed, and it can trigger women who have built their identities around being chosen. But her intention is not to provoke. Her intention is simply to be, and the sheer unadulterated authenticity of a liberated soul acts as an involuntary mirror, forcing those around her to confront the cages they have accepted as homes. She is not in a rush. The frantic, desperate energy of a society obsessed with instant gratification has no hold on her. She moves at the rhythm of her own soul. While the world swipes left and right in a frantic search for connection, she cultivates it within. While others curate their lives for an online audience, she curates her inner world for herself. She desires depth in a world that worships the superficial. She craves presence in a world that offers fragmented attention. When she says no, it is not a strategic move in a game of seduction. It is a complete sentence born of deep self-respect. When she chooses a quiet evening with a book over a meaningless date, it is not arrogance. It is an act of energetic preservation. When she withdraws, it is not a punishment. It is a necessary retreat to recharge in her own sacred space. This clarity, this unwavering commitment to her own well-being, is the fruit of immense inner work. It was earned through tears, through facing agonizing truths, through letting go of people and dreams she once thought she couldn't live without. She has learned that it is infinitely better to be alone and feel everything than to be with someone and feel invisible. She has discovered that her solitude is not a void to be filled, but a canvas on which she is painting the masterpiece of her own life. And that act of creation, that simple act of being, is the most profound revolution of all. Perhaps the most radical thing about the woman who lives alone is not her independence, but the palpable peace she has cultivated within it. She is the living proof of Jung's assertion that who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Her awakening was no fairy tale. It was a messy, brutal, and ultimately beautiful process of unbecoming everything she was not so she could finally become who she was meant to be. It involves stripping away layers of conditioning, confronting the shadow of her codependency, and lovingly reparenting the parts of herself that were wounded. She no longer seeks her reflection in the eyes of a lover. She has found it in the depths of her own soul. And this changes the entire energetic equation of her life. There was a time when she too equated being single with failure. She absorbed the societal narrative that to be unpartnered was to be unwanted. But through her inner journey, she had a profound epiphany. True loneliness is not being by yourself. It's being with someone who makes you feel alone. True abandonment is not someone leaving you. It's you abandoning yourself to keep them. On the day she understood this, she made a sacred vow to her own soul: never again. Never again would she betray her intuition. Never again would she accept less than reciprocal energy. Never again would she silence her own voice to make someone else comfortable. Her path is not without its challenges. There are still moments of doubt, waves of nostalgia, and nights where the silence feels heavy. But beneath it all, there is a bedrock of strength that has been forged in the fires of her self-reclamation. She understands now that the love she seeks is not a cage, however gilded. It is a vast open sky where two eagles can soar side by side, neither restricting the other's flight. And until she finds a love that expansive, she will continue to nurture her own wings, to strengthen her own spirit, to expand her own consciousness. This is not pride, it is profound integrity. She has undergone the alchemical process of individuation that Jung described. She was broken down to her essential elements, confronted her own shadow material, descended into the underworld of her psyche, and emerged more integrated, more whole than ever before. Now that she knows the feeling of being complete within herself, she refuses to ever be a fraction of anything again. She seeks not a savior, but a fellow sovereign. And this is intimidating because it requires a partnership built on radical emotional responsibility, a quality still tragically rare in a world that often loves from a place of lack, fear, and a desire for control. Every step she takes alone is a testament to her healing. Every no she utters is a love letter to herself. Every moment of chosen solitude is a declaration that her own presence is enough. The woman who now walks in quiet confidence is not the same one who once pleaded for affection. Something within her had to shatter for the light to get in. It was the collapse of her old reality that created the space for her authentic self to be born. Jung's metaphor is perfect. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. She has been to her personal hell. She has faced the inherited pain of her lineage, the silenced voices, the broken dreams, the unfulfilled desires of the women who came before her. In choosing her own path, she is breaking generational curses. She is refusing to replay the toxic scripts of martyrdom and self-sacrifice. She learned the hard way that it is not her job to be a rehabilitation center for broken men. It is not her duty to accept mistreatment out of a fear of emptiness. And as she began to embody this new truth, the world around her pushed back. But she held her ground, first with trembling hands, then with steady resolve, and finally with the quiet invincibility of someone who has stared into the void and discovered it was not a void at all, but a womb of creation. Someone who has learned to befriend their own abyss no longer fears the absence of another. She has learned to be her own hearth, her own sanctuary, her own source of warmth and validation. This doesn't make her unreachable, it simply makes her energetically discerning. There is a vast difference between opening your heart and allowing it to be trampled. She still opens it, but only to those who approach with reverence and truth. Her intuition, once a faint whisper she often ignored, is now a roaring lion. She can smell a performance, a hidden agenda, a lack of depth, and she will quietly and gracefully move herself out of its path. Her transformation is not just psychological, it is archetypal. She has reconnected with the ancient dormant power of the feminine divine. She has awakened the wild woman within the part of her that is untamable, intuitive, and fiercely loyal to her own soul. She embodies the wisdom of the crone who has seen all the cycles of life and death and is no longer fooled by superficiality. Though she may be physically alone, she is in deep communion with something far greater than herself, her own untethered spirit. No label can stick to her because she is no longer defined by anything outside of her own essence. She doesn't fight for attention. She radiates a presence that commands respect. She is no longer waiting to be chosen. She is the one who chooses. And this fundamental reversal of the power dynamic is what so deeply confuses and disrupts the old order. She has crossed a threshold, and on the other side, she has discovered that the most profound relationship you will ever have is the one you build with yourself. Every other healthy relationship is simply an overflow of that primary bond. There is a sacred quality to the way this woman moves through life. Her confidence is not loud or performative. It is a quiet, steady hum of self-assurance that emanates from her very core. It's the confidence of someone who has faced her inner demons and chosen to become their master, not their victim. This is the destiny Jung spoke of. What we successfully confront within ourselves becomes our power. In choosing herself again and again, she has become the author of a life that most people will never understand, but many will secretly envy. She no longer exhausts herself trying to prove her worth. She knows her worth is inherent and non-negotiable. She doesn't demand space in anyone's life because she understands that true presence is given freely and joyfully, or it is not worth having. She still desires love, connection, and intimacy. She is still profoundly human. But the quality of her desire has been refined in the alchemical fire of her self-discovery. She is no longer looking for a fairy tale. She is seeking a soul alliance, a partnership where there is no hierarchy, no power struggle, only the mutual celebration of two whole sovereign beings. A connection where both can be shadow and light storm, and stillness, laughter, and tears without fear of judgment or rejection. She knows that anyone who only loves her sunny side is not ready for the depth of her soul. If this high standard means she must wait, then she will wait. She would rather thrive in her solitude than merely survive on emotional crumbs. To the immature ego, this looks like arrogance. To the wise soul, it is the purest expression of self-love. We are witnessing the emergence of a new female archetype, the woman who has turned away from the noise and found music in her own silence. The woman who grew tired of being merely desired and chose to be respected. The woman who is alone not because she renounced love, but because she finally understood that authentic love never ever requires self-abandonment. When a woman reaches this level of consciousness, her very presence becomes a catalyst for change. The energy in a room subtly shifts when she enters. This isn't magic. It is the physics of consciousness. It is the energetic weight of a soul that has fought its inner wars and returned with peace as its trophy. Jung would say she has achieved wholeness, not by becoming perfect, but by integrating her opposites. She is both fierce and tender, powerful and receptive, independent and capable of profound connection. She is too whole to accept a half-love, too free to be contained in a prison disguised as a relationship, too deeply connected to her own truth to tolerate shallow bonds. And she is strong enough to continue on this path, even when it's lonely, because she knows it is the path of her soul's evolution. Ultimately, the world fears women like her. Women who don't need women, who don't supplicate women, who refuse to be defined by anyone but themselves. They are dangerous to the status quo because they expose the lie that a woman is incomplete on her own. By rewriting their own stories, they give other women permission to do the same. And that is a quiet, beautiful, and unstoppable revolution. So she continues her journey sometimes with tears of remembrance, sometimes with a heart full of gratitude, but always with her feet planted firmly on the earth of her own being. Because she knows now in her bones that she is not alone. She is with herself. And after all she has been through, that is everything. The love that finds her now will not be her salvation. It will be her celebration. It will not come to fill her empty spaces, for she has none. It will come to dance with her in the beautiful, expansive fullness she has already created. When she closes a door, she does it without malice. When she chooses silence, she does it with peace. Because she has finally understood that the ultimate quest is not to find the right person, but to become the right person. To become so unapologetically, so divinely, and so completely yourself that you never ever lose yourself again. And when that becomes your reality, everything that is meant for you will find you drawn in by the irresistible magnetism of a soul that is finally and freely home.